Hi, Amy with AJ's Vintage Designs here for the Dixie Belle YouTube channel, and I have a great idea for a holiday gift. Now, if you're not sure what to get somebody, you're going to a house party and you need to bring a gift, why not do a little personal touch and make your gift? Now, you can get these little serving trays for very inexpensive. I got this at Hobby Lobby and I believe it was $8.99, plus they have their 40% off coupons. And then a set of coasters, just the cute little wooden coasters. They already have the rubber feet on them. These, for a set of four, $3.99. So this is gonna be a very economical gift, but you're doing your personal touch. You're gonna use your Dixie Belle products on it to make it something special and unique. Now, I'm thinking about using this as I'm gonna put a bottle of wine in here, and then maybe some candies or treats around it, and then I'm gonna have matching coasters to go with. So what I'm gonna do is a color that's very versatile, that goes with so many people's decor, is dried sage. Next, I'm gonna be decoupaging, yes, decoupaging, using Dixie Belle's top coat. Today I'm using it in flat. You can use any of their top coats, but today I'm using it in flat. We're gonna use the Dixie Belle top coat, and we're gonna decoupage napkins onto this. But since my theme is, to put a bottle of wine in here, I've got little wine napkins. So, that cute little wine bottles. So I'm going to be decoupaging wine bottles on this tray and use it as a gift. I could have used gel stain, it would have been gorgeous, or I could use Dixie Belle's voodoo stain as well. That would be just as gorgeous, but today I'm using dried sage. This is like one of my go-to colors. I absolutely love this color. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint this. I'm using my Dixie Belle Mini. It's gonna be a nice neutral color. So I'm gonna keep painting this, and I'm gonna get it all painted up, and I'll be right back to show you what's next. Okay, so it only took one coat. Got it all covered. And while I was at it, they're still wet, my fingers are messy, but I went ahead and painted the coasters too, because I'm gonna be decoupaging the same wine napkins on the coasters as I am on the tray. Now the coasters, when you're painting them, you'll see that they're very like raw wood. You can actually see that it's pretty, you can see a lot of the texture. So if that bothered you, you'd have to take some sandpaper to it to smooth it out, because it is, definitely rougher wood. But I put the paint on, I'm gonna let it dry now, and then when I come back, we're gonna start the decoupage process, and that is gonna entail putting down 2 coats of my Dixie Belle top coat. And today I'm using flat, but you'll be able to use flat, satin, or gloss. Okay, so the paint is dried, and the next step is taking I keep all my top coats and my paints, I keep them in FIFO bottles. So this is Dixie Belle's top coat in flat, but like I said earlier, you can use any sheen. I'm gonna pour some out onto my dish. And I'm gonna do, normally, move this other way. Normally you put the top coat wherever you're gonna be decoupaging, but I'm not quite sure where I'm gonna lay this napkin, because the napkin is not the same size, and I don't want any seams or lines where I have 2 napkins connected together. So since I don't know exactly how I'm going to lay it in there, lay it on here yet, I'm going to just put the top coat everywhere. So I do need 2 coats of the top coat. So I'm putting on the first coat now, just using a regular synthetic brush, or you can use a sponge. I'm using one of my old brushes because I'm notorious for forgetting to rinse out my brushes when I'm using my top coat. And I don't want to hurt my good Dixie Belle brushes. So I am just using, there's a regular old synthetic brush, putting on the top coat, just like I was putting on a coat of paint. And I'll be putting 2 coats on. You could probably get away with 1, but I just want to be on the safe side, and I want to have plenty of top coat on here, so when I use my iron to heat up and do the decoupage process, that I have enough top coat product underneath my napkin so that when it heats up, the top coat heats up and reactivates and acts like a glue. And I just wanna make sure that there's enough top coat there to hold down the napkin. So, I'm top coating everything. You would just top coat where you want to decoupage right now. But I'm not exactly sure where I'm putting the napkin, so I'm putting my top coat on the entire surface. Okay. I'm putting some on the outside too, because I don't know if I'm gonna put the napkin. I had a couple ideas where I was gonna lay the napkin over, kind of like you would a tea towel when you're serving bread. Thought about doing that with the napkin or just lining the bottom. I haven't decided yet, so I'm putting the top coat everywhere. I'm just put it on just like I would a coat of paint. Making sure I have no drips though. You don't want any drips. Okay, I'm gonna do the same to each one of my coasters, but I'm only gonna do the top of the coasters because I know that I'm only gonna decoupage on the tops. So I'm just getting one coat on the top. Okay, so I have one coat on everything and I'm gonna let it dry. It only is gonna take maybe 45 minutes to an hour to fully dry. And then I'm going to go ahead and apply a second coat, just like I just did, exactly the same way. I'm gonna apply a second coat and let that dry, and then I'll be right back and we're gonna have some fun with the napkins and an iron. Okay, now we're gonna start doing the decoupage part of it. And this is actually, see how well this turned out? This is a decoupage tray that I did, and it's using the same method, and this is using tissue paper. And so, but today we're gonna use napkins. So when you get your napkins, sometimes you'll have to double check, but sometimes napkins are 2-ply, sometimes they're 3-plies, sometimes, and what they're referring to is how many layers there are. Now, I've already pre-pulled on one of these corners because the hardest part of this whole project is just separating the layers of the napkins. That's the hardest part of this whole project. And I'm gonna show you. I worked on a corner already. This is what we mean by ply. Napkins have this thin layer. Sometimes they'll have 2 thin layers. And you'll be able to tell, because you can kind of see through the napkin a little bit. And you can feel it. You can tell if you've got all the layers. So I'm pulling them apart. One's gonna be a plain white. We're getting rid of that one. And then this is the one that we're gonna be using. This is the one I'm gonna be using this for my coasters. My coasters are still a little wet, so I'm gonna set those this to the side for now. And I've already taken off the ply. You know, this was just a 2-ply napkin. And so I just had to peel off the 1 layer. And what I've decided to do is make this look like a bread basket, even though I'm gonna be putting wine in it and I've got wine bottles on here. I've got 2 coats of my top coat and they're dry now. I have my little iron. You can use any iron as long as you turn your steam setting off and put it on your cotton setting. Now this iron, I believe, only gets up to like 250 degrees. It doesn't get very hot. It's just a cheapy $3-5 one I got several years ago at the craft store. But I'm gonna put this at an angle like you would like a tea towel in a basket. And that's what I've decided to do. So I'm just gonna lay this in here. Make sure it's even. Okay, so it's just laying in here right now. Now here's the trick. I'm gonna iron it. And the iron is going to reactivate the glue or the top coat. It's gonna reactivate that and make it act like a glue. And, okay, my iron's hot. Okay, so I'm going to I'm just slowly moving it around the napkin, heating up that top coat underneath. And you'll see, I start from the middle and I push my way out towards the edges so that I can push out bubbles. So I'm gonna work from the center and work my way out, getting into the corners. So what's nice about this cheapy little small iron, it fits in small areas like this. Now, if you're using a full-size iron that gets hotter than this little crafty one that I've got here, then you're gonna wanna put parchment paper, a sheet of parchment paper between you or your iron and your tissue paper, napkin, or paper that you're using. You're gonna wanna put parchment paper in between so you don't leave any like scorch marks or burn marks on your paper. So you can use parchment paper in between. But since this iron doesn't get very hot, I'm not using the parchment because of the fact that I want even more heat on my napkin. So, and as you can tell, I mean, the parts I've done are already attached. My tough thing is you gotta watch your cord here so your cord doesn't tear your paper. So you just move it around and you'll be able to tell, you know, what areas are stuck down and what aren't. Working all the bubbles out of it, heating up all the areas. Don't stay in one area for too long. Okay, getting the point of the front point of my iron into all the crevices. Okay, and I'm going to now stand up. I'm gonna now get inside here. And another reason you'd want to use a parchment paper if you're using a good iron is so you don't get any top coat on your iron. Now this is just a crafting iron, so I'm not worried about it. It's only used for crafting. But if you're using your good iron, you'll want to use the parchment paper. Okay, see how that's in there? Now I'm gonna take off that edge right there with some sandpaper. You can use a sanding block. I'm just gonna grab some 400 grit sandpaper. Just rub along your edge, and that came off. Now you see I've got that little edge, this little edge right here. Same thing. Take your sandpaper and in a downward motion, that comes right off. Okay, so far, doesn't that look cute? Okay, so now, let that cool for a minute, make sure all my areas are down. I'll let that cool off. And these are still a little damp. Give those a second. Okay, now, what I'm gonna wanna do right here is, see how nice and smooth that is? It's gonna get messy. And when I refer to messy is we're gonna put a top coat on top of here because I'm gonna be putting stuff in here. I want this protected. And so I'm gonna be putting a top coat on top of this. Well, what's gonna happen, it's gonna bubble, it's going to wrinkle, but I'm gonna show you. It's gonna bubble, it's gonna wrinkle, but as soon as it dries, it goes back to normal, gets smooth, and then we're gonna iron it again and it's gonna be flawless. So let's put one coat of top coat on here. Okay, and you can use gator hide, you can use, you know, any top coat that you want. I am just gonna stick with my top coat that I've got right here. But you can use any top coat. Like I said, I'm gonna show you. This is gonna get, it's gonna get scary. And you're gonna think, oh my gosh, I ruined it. No, it will go back down to normal. The napkin is just soaking up the top coat and it's gonna stretch. And it's gonna bubble. But then when it dries, it's gonna relax and it's gonna go back down to normal. So I'm putting on a thin layer of top coat. Now the trick is, when you put your top coat on, only swipe across it a couple times, because if you go over it too much, you're gonna tear your paper, because your paper's gonna get really fragile when it's wet. Okay, moving from the center out to the edges. It helps push the bubbles out. Okay, and on this, I'm just applying the top coat. It's a thin layer. And at the top. Okay, get this top. I'm gonna show you and you're gonna be like, ah! But just wait, just wait. This top coat with an iron is amazing. Okay, but like I said, you don't wanna go over it too many times. You're gonna be tempted to be like, oh, I wanna push all these bubbles out. No, just go over it a couple times. Just understand you're gonna have the bubbles. And I'm gonna show you what's next. So don't be tempted to keep going over it to push the bubbles out. I didn't get any top coat in that section, that's dry. There we go. So you're gonna be tempted on pushing out the air bubbles, but you don't do it, just wait. I'm gonna show you. Look at how messy this is gonna look. Okay, so can you see all those bubbles and those wrinkles in there? And in just a minute, especially look at down here. See all those bubbles? Okay. As soon as that dries, you're gonna be surprised. Okay, so one of these is already ready. So I'm gonna go ahead and do at least one of these coasters. I see one of them's dry. I don't need a whole napkin for a coaster. So I'm just gonna tear out what I need. And if you're nervous about tearing your paper, you can use a paintbrush with some water and draw a tear line, and your paper will tear right where you draw with the water. Okay, but here. So I'm gonna put the paper on top of my coaster, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'll be sanding, so I'm not worried about getting it the exact same size. Okay, so now I'm gonna iron it. Okay, I'll show you. I'm gonna iron it. Look, it's already starting to stick on. Circular motions if I need to. Get all the way to the edge. This wood was rough, remember? So it might take a little bit more heat because it's got to get in the grooves of the wood. Because even though they're cut into coasters, it's kind of like raw plywood, basically. So I'm ironing. Okay. And there, see? It's ironed on. I'm gonna let it cool though before I put the top coat on. Getting all the way to the edges. I don't want the iron to fall on my floor. There we go. Okay, so now I'm gonna go along the edges with my sandpaper. You don't have to worry about cutting anything to size. Just sanding in a downward motion. Okay. There we go. Okay, so look at. By doing a little sanding, perfect edges. See how nice that, the decoupaging? Even if you didn't put a top coat on it. Now I would do a top coat because I want it to last. So, but if it's just a temporary project, like you're just decorating for an event, you don't have to worry about it, but. Okay, so here comes the scary. I'm gonna put the top coat on it. It's gonna bubble up. And it's gonna shrivel, it's gonna wrinkle. I don't know if you can see, That one didn't shrivel up and wrinkle too bad. You kind of see in the light there. Okay, we're gonna let that dry. Okay, so now that it's dried, there's still a little bit of wrinkles, but it looks much better. Remember the bubbles that I pointed out to you? That big bubble, it's gone. So when it dries, it does kind of like shape up a little bit. So, but we still have some wrinkles in there. It's not perfect. So what we need to do is we're gonna use the parchment paper now, because now with the top coat is on top of the napkin. So now we need to use the parchment paper because we don't want it to stick to our irons. Will be directly on top of the dried top coat. So I'm gonna take my parchment paper, put it in here, and iron again. And this time we're ironing, heating it all back up again to get the wrinkles out, and you're gonna be amazed at just how beautiful it's gonna turn out. I do this on furniture with tissue paper, and I'm gonna do a tissue paper here for you in just a second. I'm gonna just do a fast tissue paper plaque here, and I'll show you just how easy it is, even with the most delicate of paper, which is tissue paper is very delicate. You can do this with fabric. And I tested it out, and you can also do it with wrapping paper. With wrapping paper, you do probably want to use a bigger iron with more heat. But wrapping paper also goes through that phase of when you put the top coat on top of it, it really wrinkles and bubbles. But when it dries, it settles back down. And then you put your top coat on it, let it dry, and then you do this again with the wax paper, with the wrapping paper, and it'll look great. I'm gonna show you just how much of a difference doing this last ironing with the parchment paper makes a huge difference. Okay, so now it's in there. So I have my little wine bottles. And if I want to, I could add a little bit of dark wax to this because I've already got a top coat on it, so it's protected. So I could do some dark wax to kind of age it up a little bit. Let me show you. Here's the coasters too. The coasters turn out so cute. Okay, so now I'm gonna add a little bit of dark wax just to kind of age it up a little bit, give it some character. And since I have my top coat on here that I used for the decoupage, I have that barrier that I need between the paint and the wax to make it move easily and easily to wipe back off so I don't get it too heavy. Usually when you put on your dark wax, you do the clear wax first. Well, I don't have to worry about that because I have this sealed with that top coat. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go along the edge of my napkin with just a little bit of wax. And I have a t-shirt right here for wiping it back. And I'm gonna go right along in swirling motion, right along the edge of my napkin. So right there, just kind of working it in all along where the napkin is attached to the tray. Right along the edge and in the crevices. Okay, so I got it nice and muddy in there. Now what I want to do is I want to wipe it back. Just giving it some age, just wiping it back a little bit. You can do this with glaze, like Dixie Belle's Van Dyke glaze. That would be a good one to use. I like to use the wax. Now this wood, these trays from Hobby Lobby, it's really raw wood, so it's not very smooth. So you will get a lot of the wax that's gonna get into the crevices. But see, by putting the wax on there, I've aged my corners and given it a little bit of character. This side has not been done. I did that side. See, it gives it some age and some character. Okay, I'm gonna do this and I'll show you when I'm done. I'm just gonna go all the way around the napkin in circular motions with some dark wax. Just going in circular motions, getting the crevices. And there's no wrong way of putting this on. You're just getting it on there. And then we're gonna be wiping it back. Just going along the edge of the napkin. Okay. Right back. I need to turn this way so I can see what I'm doing. And you wanna do small sections at a time. You wouldn't wanna wax this entire piece and then go back and wipe because the wax will really soak in. There. See how it looks more aged? Looks like it's been there for a while. Okay. So I like that. I like how it turned out. It's gonna look cute. You can do the same thing if you want to add a little dark wax to the edges of your coasters. Just to the edges. Make them look not so new. I'll do one and then I'll show you one that's not done. So you can compare what I'm talking about when I'm talking about aging it. By darkening the edges, I went all the way around the border. By darkening the edges, circular motion, just using a hard stippling or stenciling brush, it's a very stiff brush. By doing this, it doesn't look so much like a DIY project, like craft time, even though it is craft time. Okay, so let me show you one that has not been done next to one that has been done. Okay, just a subtle difference, but see, it just ages it around the edges. It's not so new looking. Okay, so what I could do is put all my finished coasters, stack them back up. Okay, so I could wrap my coasters back up in twine and put them in here if I'm doing it as a gift with my bottle of wine. So I have my wine tray with my wine coasters. And I need to finish waxing this up. I need to wax around this edge right here. And okay. I waxed it up, made it look a little bit older, and I can also do it just to the edges. Don't have to just do it to the decoupage. We can do it to the tray itself. Give it a little bit of age. Just moving inward from an edge. So we're aging up the edge a little bit. Wiping it back. Okay, and then moving to another side. Just something subtle so it doesn't look so brand new. I like to come in from the edge. I love using brown wax. I always go to the wax before I go to the glaze, it seems like. I love Dixie Belle's wax. Now, Dixie Belle's waxes are water-based. Unlike a lot of other waxes out there, Dixie Belle's is water-based. So it can be put under the paint, it could be put over the paint, you can top coat over it. It's water-based, so it works well with the paints. There, so it just aged it up a little bit so it doesn't look so new. I love it. Okay, and then I got my little coasters in there. Oh. Okay, so I have my little coasters up there. I have my little tray done. Isn't that cute? Okay, so look at how economical this gift was. And it's personalized because you made it yourself. And this was $3.99 for 4 coasters, and I believe this was $8.99, not including the coupons. So that is the one gift. But that one tip is, if you're using holiday tissue paper, just be careful when you're putting your top coat on. I mean, don't work it too much because the ink can bleed a little bit because it is inexpensive tissue paper because it's for gift wrap. But I did want to give you a heads up on that. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this project. It's an easy project. It's a great holiday gift. And my name is Amy with AJ's Vintage Designs. Check me out on Facebook at AJ's Vintage Designs. Or you can check me out also on YouTube. My YouTube channel is called Fashion Toppings, where I do crafts, painting, and sewing. So that is at Fashion Toppings here on YouTube, or AJ's Vintage Designs on Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe here to the Dixie Belle YouTube channel so you know when we're putting new projects up. The little bell next to the subscribe button, make sure you click that too. That way you get notified every time a new video comes out, and you're not gonna miss out on any of the great projects that we have coming up. Once again, this is Amy with AJ's Vintage Designs, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.